Hey, so we're back at XR at Work. I'm Scott. You're probably wondering at some point, where's Dane? Dane cannot join us today. But today we want to take some time out, talk to a good friend of mine, Drew. Drew has been one of the industry experts for a long time in XR. A lot of you probably know him. I'm kind of a little bit of a fanboy because Drew's super nice and super smart. And it's like, man, if I had just one of those characteristics, I'd be in good shape. But Drew, introduce yourself if you would, man, and tell us about you, buddy.
So you're too kind there. That's for sure. So I am Drew. I have been in the XR space since about 2015. But the industry I'm in, I've been around since about 2005. So I've been doing it a while. Originally, I have an aerospace engineering degree from NC State, so go Wolfpack.
Isn't that it? Is that it?
That's it right
All
there.
right.
Red shirt to go with it and all today. But no, so I spent the good part of my career, first 10 years doing engineering work, different concepts, different ideas, did a lot of initial designs for next generation within the field. And it was probably lead into one of your questions, but that's what led into the XR space, actually.
Yeah, how'd you get into the XR game, right? Because I see people come from a lot of different backgrounds. And what was your foray into it?
So my foray into it was the field where I was at within the company was everything was highly conceptual. So you didn't actually have physical anything. And so it was a lot of PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm.
And around 2015, the big boom with the Oculus DK2 and everything, had a buddy go to CES, come back and was like, hey, there's some really cool technology with augmented virtual reality. I think we should try something. And I saw it and I was like, that's cool. We can definitely use it for something. I don't know what, but we'll figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went off and got some game engines. It was Unity and Unreal at the time. And I know the first time we tried downloading it, our IT people were like, you want to download a game engine? And we're like, yeah, we can do some cool stuff. So we got it, did some initial concepts with some augmented reality. Like at the time it was the McLaren, one of their cars where you could scan a QR code and it would blow up 1-to-1 scale. We actually did a large plot of a big QR code to see how big we could make it because it was attached to size of QR codes, how big you can make it. So we almost had a full-size car.
Yeah.
But then we got to playing around with it and realized, hey, like things that you're doing on PowerPoint, now we can do it at a 1-to-1 scale and we can start walking around it and seeing all of these things in a whole new perspective that you couldn't see before. And from there, we kind of evangelized it throughout the company. We talked to everybody. The original plan, we were trying to hand it off in another group. Like, this is cool. But now everybody else is like, that's really neat, but we're kind of busy with our own day job. So we ended up starting our own group. And then 7 years on, we got a team of developers and do most of our work in-house. So that's kind of the evolution of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I run into this a lot too. Like I hear you say this, Drew, talking about when you first start to bring XR into an existing enterprise or company. I got my fair share of the, wait a minute, you're going to do what? I don't know about all that. I mean, did you get a lot of pushback or did you have did they remove obstacles for you or how tough was it?
At first, it was kind of a mixed bag, I guess. Some people were like, oh, I'm not sure about that, but we're like, we just want to test it. Like, you can watch us. We became really good friends with our security guys, our InfoSec guys.
That's good. Yeah.
I say friends. They're my friend. Every time they see me coming, they're like, oh.
They wouldn't say the same about you.
No. But they're like, here comes another headache. I'm feeling it. But it was just like, hey, we want to test this out. Like, just like you can watch everything we do. You can like go through the whole process a lot of times, like send it through the whole IT process of getting things approved, which can be sometimes a little bit long in the tooth, but that's okay. I mean, they're doing what they have to do
Yeah.
to make sure we're safe. But most everybody was pretty okay with it. Like, just get it in. Let's see what we can do. It's new. It's advanced. Let's go from there. We did have some pushback that was basically, what are you doing? Why are you playing with games?
Yeah.
Like, we're not a gaming company, so why are you doing that? So it's kind of been kind of interesting to see the evolution where you bring up the four-letter G word, game, and everybody's like, whoa, to today they're like, it's now standard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of par for course. So
I just read recently, there's an article about, I think it may have been Christopher Lind, where someone was talking about does the term gamification need to go away? Is it played out? Is it counterproductive? And, but I think gamification, or, making learning fun and adding a little bit of incentive or a competition there. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I don't think the word game, like you say, it's a 4-letter word. I don't think it has the negative connotation maybe it did in years past. What do you think?
no.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. And actually, I've been in multiple conversations around gamification, like onboarding, things like that, training. I've heard different arguments for gamification. I've heard some, like, I think the little bit of competitive spirit there is good, but you have to be cautious of it, especially in an enterprise setting, because it could start to shun or outcast others who might find it too much stress or too much pressure. So you gotta find that balance in there. But no, I think it is not going away. From what I've seen, I think more people are trying to figure out how to do it and how to do it well, which is really the part to any of this is, how do you do it well? You can do it, anybody can do it, but how do you do it right and how do you do it well?
So, I mean, we talk about this a lot on XR at Work, Drew. It's this notion of, everything isn't a problem that XR needs to go fix, right? And so I was talking to a group yesterday about kind of adoption and kind of those initial conversations. I have lots of factories that I go into, and I used to go and lead with, look at this device. I mean, you want to try this out, and there's the cool factor, but it wasn't getting adoption. And what I found now is that I lead with a conversation, with asking questions, with discovery, and I get to understand who I'm talking to, who's across the table from me or standing next to me on the factory floor. What are your pains? What are your processes like? What do you need help with? How long does it take to get someone in to fix this machine if it goes down? How long is the machine down? So we have those conversations before we ever get into technology, because I don't want them to get all enamored with the devices and stuff and us not to focus on the most important thing, right? I mean, what does that look like conversation for you in your job? Do you have to do a lot of kind of convincing, cajoling, collaborating? Is a lot of pushing or pulling? What's day-to-day like for you? I mean, and is your hair turning gray? I know both our beards are turning gray.
The grayness is not from the job as much as it is from all the kids.
Probably from the kids, yeah.
No, I think at first when we came into it, we were definitely much like, check out this technology. Like everybody we'd talk to, we gave so many demos. They're like, look at all this cool, fun technology. And a lot of people get really hyped about it. And we had a few use cases that definitely crashed and burned because we rushed headlong into it and was all about the technology. And when you come at the end of it, you're like, oh, I could have done that with like an iPad or something else, like just like paper even sometimes. And you're like, all right, so we got to be better about picking use cases. We need to understand the technology, but we need to definitely have those conversations and go through that discovery process. And so we use agile methodology with what we're doing, and that is a huge part of just going down, talking to them, like, all right. So, and typically they get routed to us, like somebody has seen something we've done, and they're like, hey, we hear you might be able to help us, like. And so our first thing is to go in and be like, all right, well, what's your problem? What are you trying to do? Where's this going? Because yes, we can show something flashy, but your real problem isn't the flashy side. The real problem's on deeper into it. We did one project at one point in which it was really cool and came out all flashy and showy. And we went and showed it to them, and they were like, that's cool, but that's only like 1% of what we want to do. The 99% is on the other side. And we're like, okay, so we need to ask these questions up front first. And like,
Yeah.
then we know the technology. Now, once we figured out what they're asking, then we can go, okay, does this make sense? Or is this really more in someone else's field house? And maybe we're just a connector piece at that point, just going, hey, you should really go talk to these guys and just make the connection across the board.
Yeah, because we've got other technology besides XR,
Yeah.
in my company, and you guys
Yeah.
do as well. Sometimes the answer is, hey, you should talk to the connected machine guys, or you should really talk to, some of the digital transformation or different groups.
Yeah.
It's not always a nail that needs an XR hammer, right?
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like in the past, the XR group, because we have the flashy, showy stuff, a lot of people will come to us first, but we become a switchboard and more of a way for people to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And like you dig into it, and it's like the technology started the conversation, but really it's a process change.
Yeah.
Like we can interject the technology, but until the process changes, the technology is just going to be another possible hiccup in there. So let's change the process. Let's communicate with each other. Let's actually talk and have conversations.
Sometimes it's like you're holding a group therapy session, and
It is
just getting husband and wife to talk, and you just kind of sit back and check your Instagram,
Yeah, I've been in multiple conversations that started out with us getting involved, and then by the end of it, I'm like, why are we still here? Like, like you guys are going to solve this, and you don't need us. But okay, we started it, so go guys, go.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of new beginner practitioners in XR that watch that subscribe to XR at Work, that watch the podcast, and I think. And that's what Dane and I have tried to do. And I know you have a real heart for this as well, as we try to foster some community and a sense of, hey, there are people out here that have done this, and we have no interest in steering you wrong, right? We're not a vendor.
No.
We're not trying to sell something, So I get a lot of people that call me up and say, hey, I work in banking, I work in healthcare, I work in retail, and I'm in IT, and they want me to now go do something, augmented reality. What do I do? And I mean, so as people are starting to get into this line of work, as they're being tapped to do what you were tapped to do, or I was tapped to do years ago, what kind of advice do you have for them? I mean, just starting out, any pointers for people just getting going?
So, I've been asked that a couple of times at conferences and stuff like that around like, how do you start out? And I think some of the biggest things, so we have been thankful is our group resides within our IT organization.
Yeah.
But if a lot of groups work in either engineering or they're manufacturing, and they've been kind of brought into this. One is become friends with your IT department, because they're going to make your life a lot easier or really miserable, depending on which way you want to go. I also found that there's a marriage that has to happen between someone who's an individual contributor and someone who's at a leadership level or a VP level, and then meeting a manager in the middle that will connect those three, because you might have somebody from the top pushing down and maybe somebody from the bottom pushing up, but it hits this middle management at times that'll sometimes get stuck. So I think having all three layers in agreement definitely helps smooth things over, because there's only so far an individual contributor can carry it. And if you've got the higher levels supporting it, it makes things move a lot easier and a lot smoother. Because if you're trying to push uphill the whole way, it gets really rough. And if you've got nobody under you willing to do the leg grunt work, then you're not going to get much traction either. So
your advice, here's what I hear. Make friends with IT.
Yeah.
And be sure you're including in all levels of stakeholders, executives,
yes,
the practitioners. So I think that's interesting, Drew, because both of those require a skill that isn't taught a lot in college, and it's relationship building, it's rapport. And I've found that to be super important. It's far more important that I can build relationships and have rapport with people than it is that I'm really smart or at my, at XR. Are you seeing the same thing? Is it more relationship building than you thought?
I think it requires two sides. I think if you're trying to do it solo, it becomes really challenging. Thankfully, when we started out, there was a small group of us, 2 to 3, maybe 4 of us, and I was better at the relationship side, and they were really good at the development side.
Yeah.
And so it worked out well to where I was building relationships, they were building really neat POCs that we could then show,
Yeah.
and it really helped foster that. Because I've looked at it kind of like we've been almost like a startup within a big enterprise.
Yeah.
Like you meet these startups all the time, and you've got the one sales guy, and he'll talk about everything. But then you've got some of these really smart. Well, even the sales guys are smart. No, just them. But you've got the developers on the back end who are making whatever they're selling work.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, from my standpoint, within the company, has been kind of that level of thinking.
Yeah.
Especially when we started, because when we started, we weren't tapped to go do this. We kind of came up with this out of thin air
Yeah.
and started pushing it ourselves. So
So here's a loaded question for you, right? So, I mean, do you feel like there's a future in manufacturing and oil and gas and enterprise? I mean, is there a future for XR? Is this a fad? Where do you see this deal going?
I think there is a future for it. My future, I don't think we focus so much on hardware as to the medium that you view it through, whether it be an AR headset or a tablet or whatever. I think you have to look at it more as, how do you get in with a digital thread and that digital transformation and use the platforms to power and do the integration piece? Because if I can take data that is being used today and get it to the end user, whether it's a mechanic or sales rep or engineer, whoever, and I can link all of those together, because a lot of times in big enterprises, you have a lot of disparity going on, even though you're trying to all get to the same point.
You get that right. Yeah.
We have found that, like, the game engines have a lot of power and can tie a lot of pieces together. And now, whether I want to push it to an AR headset or whether I want to push it to a tablet or just a screen, that's just secondary at this point. I've almost built a software development platform with tools that are readily available and cheap.
Interesting. Yeah.
No.
So you feel like we got a future at this deal? We're going to be okay? I mean, it's certainly, I probably got a few years on you. I think I could probably do XR to retirement, which, knock on wood, will be in about 10 years. But I mean, you feel like that there's a future in it. What do you think?
I definitely do.
What do you think is going to change, though? I mean, because obviously it's going to evolve. It's going to change. Devices are going to get smaller. Better bandwidth is going to help with some of this. What do you think's going to happen the next few years? I mean, you see the stuff that I do, talk to a lot of the same software developers and device manufacturers. What are you looking forward to? What do you think's coming down the pipe?
So, well, as everybody in the space is always interested to see what Apple's going to do. That's kind of the big question mark.
That's all everyone ever talks about. My gosh.
Yeah. They're never first, but what they do very well.
They do solid stuff. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think that there's going to also be more integrations with a lot of the other tech buzzwords like artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're already starting to see that. 5G is another big one coming on. The more data I can send through the network piping, theoretically, the more I can show and do. I do think that there has definitely been a spike in technology. I think it will continue to spike, but maybe in the XR space, it might plateau just a little bit before it shoots up again, because there's some really smart people doing some really smart stuff, but getting the hardware into form factors that do everything we want them to do is kind of been the real challenge. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But
I kind of feel like hardware is lagging behind. Right? If you look at software versus hardware right now, I feel like software is winning. I haven't always felt like that, but right now I really feel like it's about time for the hardware to kind of pick it up a little bit. And I think it will, but are you feeling the same way?
Yeah, I feel like 5 years ago, hardware was definitely shooting to the top.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of been that seesaw balance back where software is playing out a little bit more right now. And that's probably more of what I would say the plateau is, that hardware is kind of like trying to figure out their footing. Like I said, who knows with Apple, it may shoot back up again. We don't know.
It's definitely easier and cheaper to start a software company than it is to start a device manufacturing company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then having that somebody else to help you with all that NRE
Sure.
and all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I think it's an exciting time to be an XR, you know, and I know we always look forward to some of the conferences to get back, you know,
Yep.
in person, to be able to network and sit around and have a drink and talk and swap stories. I mean, I put a lot of value in being able to talk to guys like you who have a breadth of knowledge, easy to talk to, will shoot me straight. You know, I've called you several times and been like, hey, what do you know about this or that? Or, you know, what do I do?
Right.
And I really appreciate that. That's something that I want to thank you for. I mean, how important has your network been and personal relationships, professional relationships been for you as you work to grow XR in your day job?
It's been huge. Not only has it been big to have the networks within the company, but like you and all of the others, Dane, Brian, his dad, all those guys that have been around a while. There's so much to learn from that. Much like you've called me, I've definitely called you and was like, hey, what's going on? What do you know about all this?
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it. And there seems like there's a lot of people in this space, but really there's not a lot of people in this space. So you kind of learn that you're circling a lot of the same people on a regular basis, and it's always good to continue to have that that network. And you run into a hurdle or a challenge, it's good to call somebody and see how maybe they handled it.
Right.
And so I think that's a key part to a lot of this, and especially to see it grow and succeed.
I think it is too, man. I mean, you know, because Dan and I, we talk all the time, and he's like, hey, we're fixing to put devices in China. What you know? I'm like, oh, dude, we just went through that. Let me tell you, watch out for this, watch out for that. And, or I'll say, hey, I'm looking to go start to do something with Matterport or whatever. And he's like, oh, let me show you what we did and how we did it. And I mean, to me, that's like, I mean, it's gold. And I just really feel like we need to be fostering that sort of community openness. And I know you've been a big part of that. You've always been very approachable.
Yeah. And I think that plays out well, because I see what like you and Dane are doing, and like you're putting devices out everywhere, and that's awesome. I'm sometimes like, why aren't we doing that? But then I look at what we're doing, and it's kind of different, you know, in some ways, but and that's okay, because like each individual enterprise is going to have their own unique set of demands and desires to go after. So I'm all for supporting it. The more you can get out there, that's great. The more people that see it and use it, if they come across to our industry, then hey, they're already adopted and ready to use it where we are. So
if you saw that the episode we did with Dr. Brian Laughlin, I look at some of the stuff that they've done at Boeing, and it's like, golly, man, I'm not worthy of even being in the same room with this guy. But I put 10 times the number of headsets out that he has. But he's done some deep, heavy, you know, intense stuff. So it kind of takes all types, right? You know?
Yeah. I did get to watch that, and I've talked to Brian in the past, and one of his counterparts at Boeing, Paul Davies, and both of those guys. It's just amazing what they've been able to do, and it's like, I think we can do that. But then when we talk, he's like, well, what you're doing is really awesome too, and it's like, okay, like we're all doing different things. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're not, and that's okay. We just continue to grow.
So let me ask your take on this, man. I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but and I'm not looking to name any names or call anyone out, but I mean, I've had my issues in the past, and they're mine. I have to own up to them, where I'm like, you know, we got people that are like talking heads in XR. It's like, you know, all you do is run around to conferences and talk. You don't actually do anything, right? And then we got people who are doing that don't speak. We've got people working in different aspects of XR and different levels of growth and different focuses. And one of the things that I've come to realize, right, is that it takes all types. We need the talking heads. We need though I don't use like a Magic Leap. We need companies like Magic Leap to go push the envelope and try something out there. And we need a lot of different feelers out, and we need successes and failures, because that's how we can learn as an industry, and it's good for all of us. When we talk about like the metaverse, I've always had this kind of, approach of, metaverse, who cares, right? I'm over here putting devices in manufacturing facilities. But I have come around to change my point of view, Drew, that I think it's important that we have all these conversations. It's important that we talk about public policy and safety and devices. We need to talk about the metaverse. We need to talk about enterprise, all of this. And I've just kind of settled in a little bit and kind of had a little talk with myself about, it's okay. We all play a part in this, I mean, what's your thoughts on all the big hype going on around the metaverse and stuff right now? I mean, is it hype, or is it important? Is it necessary?
I think there's a big difference between metaverse, as you hear it from companies like Meta and all these social media companies, and what will happen within the enterprise space. I think there's definitely some education that has to happen within the enterprise, that metaverse, the way we'll probably use it, is more of falls more in the digital transformation standpoint. How do we connect tools and pieces that, like we were talking earlier, that are disparate systems, and get them kind of talking to each other, and that way we can cut down some of that latency in the whole design cycle and manufacturing and on down the road. So when I think of metaverse, I think, okay, you got the social media metaverse, which I have my own opinions on, but on the enterprise side, if we do it right, then there's a lot of value in that for companies. Like, I think you can gain a lot of efficiencies across the board, and help reduce, like I said, reduce design cycles, help reduce redundancy and things like that. It's just, I think there is a lot of discussions that will have to be had. There's a lot of to go with the discussions, a lot of the proof of concepts, just testing things out and what works, what doesn't work. Been allowed to fail from time to time, which I know a lot of people kind of get weary of, but I think that is kind of the value and the benefit, because I have a lot of conversations with different vendors and stuff, and most of the time I'm just hearing, what are you doing? And if it's very similar to others, I'm like, okay, what's new, what's not? But it's at least just good to know and see what's going on.
How much of your time do you spend just giving 30 minutes to some startup, hearing what they got, even if you think maybe you're not interested in it? I mean, you take the time to talk to them. How much of that do you try and do? Is that a big part of your kind of schedule?
It used to be a lot, especially when we were getting into the space, and everybody was getting into the space at one time.
Yeah.
It's sort of filtered out now. I'd say a couple a month, typically, will pop up, and we'll kind of sit down. And some of them are like repeats, like we've talked in the past, and it's been like 6 months to a year. So we're just like, hey, what's new?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, we try to dedicate some time just to hear and see, because like I said, the pace of technology, you just never know what's coming out next. So
it's crazy, man. Mergers and acquisitions, companies going under, all kind of activity happen. You got to stay on top of it. Yeah. Besides XR at work, where you getting XR news from, man? You got any outlets you like?
I get a few. I've got a newsletter from like Inside XR.
Yeah,
is one.
Sure.
Get you guys the conferences. That's actually where I get a lot of news, is going through conferences and whatnot.
Brand Exchange has got a lot of stuff on the blog, and
yeah. And then a lot of times it'll come straight from vendors. Just being in the space and knowing what's happening, and occasionally seeing some news articles that pop up. And then a lot of times we are kind of we see what other people's are doing, and then we just sort of put our heads down with what we're doing, and just we know what we got to get done. We know our job, so go do it. So.
Well, Drew, I really appreciate you sitting and talking with me today. It's always a treat for me to get to catch up with you, because I feel like you're doing all this cool stuff in this cool industry, and I'm just over here, just kind of trying to glom on. So you're one of my heroes in XR, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome back anytime. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person soon. We'll be at likely be at AES in October in San Diego. Yep. XR at Work, we're going to be broadcasting live from there. Awesome. And so we'll have a headset and a microphone for you, man. Come jump back on.
That sounds like a plan.
Terrific. Take care. I hope you have a good weekend.
Sounds good. Everybody. Thank you too.
All right.
Bye.